This ground squirrel is arousing from hibernation. Hibernation is nothing like sleep. It is a complete slowdown in life processes. Because of its potential value to man, many scientists are probing for an understanding of this mysterious process. This film is about one such investigation. Since he was a boy in Canada, Dr. Eric Pengelly has been interested in wildlife. He is now a zoologist at the University of California.
I actually started out with the idea that I would be a botanist, and I would work in sort of forestry or something of this nature. But I ran into a few bad botany teachers and switched over to zoology, where I happened to have some good teachers.
Winter snows have finally melted enough to allow travel along back roads. Dr. Pengelly and his research associate are returning to this area to check traps that were set 6 hours earlier.
Yeah, well, let's put out, you take 5 and put them up there, and I'll take 5 and put up here, okay? And then we'll go along on another strip.
No, they're going to be backwards from the other one then.
Well,
The hope is to capture pregnant ground squirrels so that their offspring can be born and raised in the laboratory.
I missed my point. I should have gone up on top of the rocks. I'll have to go back up there.
Ground squirrels can and have been bred in the laboratory. We try to circumvent the problem by studying when the animals actually produce their litters and judging when the females will be pregnant.
Well, the trap is sprung, and I've got an animal in here. It's a golden-mantled ground squirrel. There we are. This is a female, and she looks pregnant. Scarcely be nicer.
I'm hiding down in here. Aha. Another squirrel. I seem to be getting all the males today.
This is a female, and she looks to be pregnant too, which is what we're looking for. I wouldn't want to guarantee that, but she looks it. So that's chap number 7, so that's fine. And the principal thing is to keep them covered up so that they don't get too nervous with the sight of people and so on.
The animals must be handled with care in order to ensure their survival during the trip back to the lab. The pregnant females will provide a generation of offspring that have not been exposed to the natural environment. About 3 weeks after arriving in the lab, the first females give birth. The offspring are about an inch long.
The young ground squirrels are typically born at the end of May to the beginning of June. When they're born, they're in an extremely fetal condition with no pigmentation, and you can't see eyes or ears on them.
They're treated with the utmost care. They're tended to every day, literally 365 days a year. There are no exceptions.
They develop quite rapidly, and by the end of 4.5 weeks, they can be successfully weaned from the mother and feed themselves.
The young grow very quickly, mature very quickly, and then they and the adults fatten enormously during the summer months. This now gives you a situation of where you perhaps caught 10 females in, say, April or May, And come August or September, you may have now 70 or 80 young ground squirrels. And of course, this is an enormous advantage because, of course, you don't have to go out and catch 70 or 80 animals. And also the fact that they were born in the lab gives you a very precise control.
In autumn, many birds migrate to warmer climates, while some animals, like the deer, will remain active all winter long to forage for whatever they can find in the snow. This rabbit will put on a heavy layer of fat and compete for the scarce foliage. The fattened raccoon and bear will sleep for long periods of time, but never really hibernate. In the mountains, the golden-mantled ground squirrel eats great quantities of seeds and nuts and more than doubles its weight. In a few weeks, it will hibernate. The laboratory is different from the ground squirrel's natural environment. Yet this group of young animals also continues to eat and gain weight. The question is, will these animals hibernate? While the outdoor environment gives clues that winter is coming, such clues are purposely eliminated in the laboratory. Outside, the days are getting shorter. Inside, a clock controls the light. 12 hours on, 12 hours off. While outside the average daily temperature is dropping, the lab remains at a constant controlled temperature. Finally, the entire natural environment of the ground squirrel changes. Six months of the year, the golden-mantled ground squirrel lives off the seeds and nuts from the forest floor. Now the food has disappeared, and cold has forced most warm-blooded animals to burn more energy. Only through a drastic conservation of energy will the ground squirrel survive. By hibernating, the ground squirrel uses very little energy because the body temperature drops and all life processes slow to a minimum. Was it the change in environment that triggered hibernation? What has happened to the animals in the laboratory? Although they were born in captivity with a constant supply of food and no clues to the change of season, the laboratory animals went automatically into hibernation at the same time as their mountain relatives. Hibernation was not triggered by the environment. These ground squirrels seem to be born with a built-in control, an annual biological clock. It makes little difference what the environment is. They all hibernate. At a warm room temperature of 25 degrees centigrade, or when refrigerated to a cold 3 degrees centigrade. They reduce their own body temperature to within a few degrees of the environment.
Here is one of these, normally in a ball, curled up in a ball, but once he's removed from the nest, you can spread him out and see the truly unusual state in which he is in.
No mammal we know of hibernates all winter long. The ground squirrel arouses and goes back into hibernation several times a winter, regardless of the temperature. Normally, this is internally controlled, but by removing it from its nest, we set off the arousal process. In less than 2 hours, this animal will raise its own body temperature from 4 degrees centigrade up to a normal mammalian temperature of 37 degrees centigrade. Little is known about how the animal controls the changes that take place as it arouses. But there are some factors that can be monitored. One of these is the internal temperature. It is now 4 degrees centigrade, 33 degrees below normal. Deep breathing is one of the first signs of arousal. As arousal goes on, the circulation of blood begins to increase.
When the animal was in deepest hibernation, the heartbeat was probably only 1 or 2 beats per minute. This is quite amazing when one remembers that the normal heartbeat in these animals is around 400 beats per minute. Now, we cannot see this, but we can record it. Right now, we are up to only 10% of the normal beat.
The human heart can be slowed by a controlled lowering of the body temperature. Studies of hibernation led to the development of this surgical technique. Yet no human could survive the extremes of heart rate we are seeing here. The internal temperature is now 10 degrees centigrade, 27 degrees below normal.
Shivering in all mammals is a means of producing heat. And one must remember that a great deal of energy is required to raise the internal temperature of the ground squirrel up to 37 degrees centigrade. As arousal goes on, the whole muscular complex of the animal comes into play, and it goes into many contortions, all of which help to raise the body temperature.
Temperature, 20 degrees centigrade, 17 degrees below normal. Heartbeat, 240 per minute. The animal will soon be fully aroused. Not all hibernators behave the way the ground squirrel does. Some hibernate in response to food supply or temperature. But regardless of the differences, hibernation is an effective survival mechanism that continues to fascinate the scientist with its many potential applications.